Talia's antennae quivered as she crept through the abandoned outpost. The 3 moons of Vespera cast long shadows across the metallic structure, remnants of the first contact between her kind and the humans who had mysteriously disappeared 3 cycles ago. As a Vesperan of the Highland Hives, she had evolved as prey in the brutal food chain of her world. Every cell in her body screamed danger as she moved silently through the alien corridor. Her translucent wings fluttered nervously against her back. The humans had left so much behind, technology that could help her people survive the coming frost season. The elders had chosen her for this mission because she was the fastest, the most sensitive to danger. What they didn't know was that she came here often, drawn by curiosity about these strange beings from beyond the stars. A noise, the softest scrape of something against metal, sent her diving behind a console. Her heart hammered in her thorax as she pressed herself flat, her iridescent skin shifting to match the dull gray of the floor. The instinct to flee warred with her mission. The hive needed these supplies. "I know you're there," a deep voice called out. Not Vesperan, the vocal patterns were all wrong. "I'm not going to hurt you." Talia remained frozen, her 4 eyes scanning for movement. Then she saw him, a human male, taller than any Vesperan, with dark skin and no protective exoskeleton at all. How did they survive like that? So vulnerable, so exposed. He wore the blue garments she recognized from the educational holos, a scientist, not a warrior. "My name is Dr. Marcus Reed," he continued, setting down a strange device and raising his hands slowly. "I'm a xenobiologist. I study life forms on different planets." Talia weighed her options. The exit was 12 leaps away. She could make it if she used her wings, but the enclosed space would limit her maneuverability. "I've been hoping to meet one of your people peacefully," the human said, his voice oddly gentle. The previous expedition left because of a political dispute on Earth, not because of any conflict with Vesperans. Something in his manner, the way he stayed perfectly still, kept his voice low, suggested he understood her fear. This wasn't the behavior of a predator. Predators chased, cornered, struck without warning. This human was waiting. "I won't approach unless invited," he added. "I respect your boundaries." Boundaries? The concept was foreign to her. On Vespera, you either escaped or you didn't. There was no negotiation with the fanged beasts of the lowlands or the winged terrors of the skies. Slowly, Talia rose from her hiding place, her wings spread slightly in preparation for immediate flight. "I am Talia of the Highland Hives," she said, her translator converting her clicks and chirps into human speech. "Why have you humans returned to Vespera?" Marcus smiled, a gesture Talia had learned meant pleasure, not aggression. "To learn and to establish peaceful relations. We believe our worlds have much to offer each other. My people have only known one relationship with other species, hunter and hunted," Talia replied, still poised to flee. "Which are you?" "Neither," Marcus said, his eyes, only 2 of them, how limiting, meeting hers. "I'm a potential friend, if you'll allow it." Friend. Another foreign concept. Yet something about this human intrigued her. Perhaps it was worth the risk to learn more. "Show me," Talia challenged, taking one cautious step forward. "Show me what friendship means to humans." 3 days after their first encounter, Talia found herself reluctantly guiding Marcus and his small research team through the crystal forests of the Highland Plateau. The human scientists moved with surprising care, documenting everything but disturbing nothing. Talia kept her distance, perched on a high branch where she could watch them and scan for predators simultaneously. "Talia." Marcus called up to her. "Could you help us understand these formations?" She glided down gracefully, landing several paces away from the humans. Dr. Elena Kostova, the team's geologist, smiled at her approach. The other human, Dr. Jamal Wilson, continued adjusting his equipment, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. These are not just crystals, Talia explained, pointing to the luminescent structures. They are symbiotic life forms. The mineral shell protects the organisms inside, which produce light during our dark season. Fascinating, Elena breathed, adjusting her scanner. And do your people use them? We harvest only those that have completed their life cycle, Talia replied. The Highland hives respect the balance of all things. We must, to survive is to understand one's place in the chain. Marcus stepped closer, and Talia's wings twitched instinctively. He noticed and stopped immediately. I'm sorry, he said. I forget sometimes how our movements might seem threatening to you. I am not afraid, Talia lied, her iridescent skin betraying her emotion with a ripple of amber. Marcus's eyes crinkled. Your biology suggests otherwise. It's okay, Talia. Fear keeps you alive in this environment. I respect that. His words surprised her. On Vespera, showing fear was admitting weakness. Yet this human spoke of it with understanding, even respect. Later, as the twin suns began to set, the team set up their camp. Talia watched with fascination as they erected their shelters and established a perimeter of sonic emitters to deter predators. Will you join us for the evening meal? Marcus asked, offering her a nutrient pack adapted for Vesperan physiology. Talia hesitated. Sharing food was sacred among her people, an act of profound trust. Yet something about Marcus made her want to take risks she'd never considered before. Yes, she decided, settling at the edge of their circle. As they ate, Jamal described Earth to her, oceans vast beyond imagination, forests teeming with life that rarely killed humans, cities where millions lived without constant vigilance against predators. How do you not become weak? Talia asked. Without the threat of death always present, how do you remain strong? Humans face different challenges, Marcus explained. We've created most of our own problems, honestly. Wars, climate disasters, social inequalities, we're still evolving as a species, just in different ways than physical adaptation. And you? Talia asked him directly. What challenges have shaped you? Marcus gazed into the fire. I lost my parents young. Grew up in foster care, different families taking me in. I never quite belonged anywhere, so I looked to the stars instead. The vulnerability in his voice resonated with something deep inside Talia. Among her people, such openness would be exploited. Yet here was this human, willingly exposing his soft places. When night fell completely, the predators of Vespera began their hunting calls. Talia's antennae trembled with each distant roar. You should return to your hive for safety, Elena suggested. I will stay, Talia decided, surprising herself. Your perimeter is secure, and my people need to know more about your intentions. It is my duty to observe. What she didn't say was that she wanted to understand this human who spoke of fear as wisdom rather than weakness, who offered food without demanding submission in return. As the others retired to their shelters, Marcus remained by the fire with her. On Earth, he said quietly, there's a concept called reframing. It means seeing something familiar in a new way. I wonder if that's possible between our species, to see each other not as potential predators or prey, but as partners in understanding the universe. Talia considered his words as the moons climbed higher. Perhaps, she conceded. But old instincts do not die easily, Dr. Marcus Reed. Just Marcus, he corrected gently. And the most important adaptations never come easily. Under the alien stars, Talia felt something unfamiliar stir within her, not fear, but possibility. For the first time in her life, she wondered if there might be more to existence than simply surviving another day. The expedition entered its second week as the team ventured deeper into Vesperan territory than any humans had gone before. Talia found herself unconsciously moving closer to Marcus each day, her instincts gradually recalibrating to his presence. The way he observed her world, with reverence rather than the calculating eyes of a predator, continued to fascinate her. "These soil samples show remarkable regenerative properties," Marcus said one morning as they examined a patch of bioluminescent moss. "Your planet heals itself at rates we've never documented elsewhere." "Necessity," Talia explained, brushing one delicate finger over the moss. "Vespera's predators are destructive. Without rapid healing, nothing would survive their feeding cycles." She watched how carefully he handled the samples, his movements precise yet gentle. His hands, with their 5 fingers instead of her 4, seemed awkward yet strangely elegant. "You've stopped flinching when I move suddenly," Marcus observed with a smile. Talia's skin shimmered with blues of embarrassment. "Perhaps humans are less threatening than I first believed. Or perhaps you're braver than you give yourself credit for," he replied. The team had planned to catalog the flora around the ancient basin, a massive impact crater that had created Vespera's unusual magnetic fields. As they descended the narrow path into the basin, Talia's antennae suddenly stiffened. She threw herself into Marcus, knocking him flat against the rock wall just as a massive shape lunged from an outcropping above. "Dorsal spine," she hissed, pressing him harder against the stone as the razorback, one of Vespera's apex predators, landed where Marcus had stood seconds before. The creature, 7 feet of muscle, armor plating, and hooked talons, let out a bone-rattling screech. Jamal and Elena had already taken cover behind a boulder, weapons drawn but hesitant to fire in the unstable terrain. Instinct screamed at Talia to fly, to save herself from the predator that had devoured countless members of her hive. Instead, she planted herself between the razorback and Marcus, her wings flaring to their full impressive span. "Stay behind me," she commanded Marcus. "Its vision tracks movement. I know its hunting patterns." The razorback charged. With a grace born from generations of evolutionary survival, Talia danced aside, her movements a precise counterpoint to the predator's lumbering strength. She used her knowledge of her homeworld against the creature, leading it toward a patch of crystal formations where its bulk would be disadvantaged. "The sonic emitter," she called to Marcus. "Maximum frequency." Understanding immediately, Marcus adjusted the settings on the device and slid it across the ground toward the razorback. The high-pitched pulse that erupted sent the creature reeling in disorientation. Talia didn't hesitate. She darted forward, striking precisely at the soft spot beneath the predator's armored jaw with a small dagger. Not a killing blow, unnecessary death was anathema to Highland Hive philosophy, but enough to drive the creature away. With a roar of pain and frustration, the razorback retreated, disappearing into the deeper shadows of the basin. Breathing heavily, Talia turned to find Marcus staring at her with undisguised admiration. "You saved my life," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You would have done the same," she replied, suddenly self-conscious under his gaze. That night, after the others had retired to their tents, Talia and Marcus sat together beneath Vespera's moons. The research camp hummed with enhanced security measures, but neither seemed concerned about further attacks. "I've spent my life as prey," Talia said softly. "Today, I chose differently." Marcus reached out, hesitating just above her iridescent hand. "May I?" When she nodded, he gently touched her fingers. The contact sent a strange warmth through her alien physiology. "On Earth, we have a saying," he murmured. "Courage isn't the absence of fear, but acting despite it. Your Earth wisdom is." "Not without merit," Talia admitted, her skin flushing with patterns of deep purple, the Vesperan signal of deepening trust and attraction she hoped he couldn't interpret. His fingers intertwined with hers, so different yet somehow fitting perfectly. "I'm beginning to think," Marcus said, his eyes reflecting the starlight, "that the most important discoveries of this expedition have nothing to do with soil samples or mineral compositions." Talia's antennae quivered with emotions she had no names for. "Perhaps some mysteries are worth exploring slowly," she suggested, not pulling away from his touch. Under the ancient light of distant stars, predator and prey no longer existed, only two beings bridging the void between worlds. The research outpost bustled with activity as the team prepared for their return journey to Earth. After 6 weeks on Vespera, they had collected enough data to fill a dozen scientific journals. But for Talia, the most significant discoveries weren't recorded in any of their instruments. She watched from the doorway as Marcus packed his equipment, her 4 eyes tracking his every movement. She had memorized them all by now, the way he ran his hand through his dark curls when concentrating, how his shoulders tensed slightly before he spoke of something important. "The Council has accepted your proposal," she said, stepping into the room. 3 Vesperan scientists will accompany your team back to Earth as cultural ambassadors. Marcus looked up, his face brightening. "That's excellent news. Who did they select?" Talia's skin rippled with nervous patterns of gold and amber. "Kivara, our leading biologist. Ethron, a specialist in interspecies communication. And myself." "You?" Marcus set down the sample case he'd been organizing. "I thought your duty was to the Highland hives." It is." Talia moved closer, her movements no longer guarded around him. "But I requested this assignment. The Council agreed that my experiences with humans make me uniquely qualified." What she didn't say was how she had stood before the Hive matriarch, arguing passionately that understanding humans was now essential to Vesperan survival, not as prey evading predators, but as equals in an expanding universe. Marcus stepped toward her, then hesitated. "Is this what you want, Talia? Earth will be overwhelming. Everything will be foreign to you." "Not everything," she replied softly. The unspoken current between them had grown stronger with each passing day. What had begun as biological curiosity had evolved into something neither of their species had vocabulary to properly name. That evening, the team held a small celebration with members of Talia's hive. Under the light of the 3 moons, humans and Vesperans shared stories, music, and carefully prepared food safe for both species. Later, Talia led Marcus away from the gathering, up to the crystal-studded cliffs that overlooked the vast Vesperan landscape. "This is where I came as a youngling," she explained, "when the pressures of survival became too intense. Up here, even the apex predators rarely venture." The bioluminescent plains below pulsed with life, while above them, stars scattered across the night sky like luminous spores. "It's beautiful," Marcus whispered, standing close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. "I never saw it that way before," Talia admitted. Beauty was a luxury prey couldn't afford. "We see escape routes, hiding places, danger zones. You taught me to see wonder instead." Marcus turned to her, his expression serious. "Talia, I need to ask you something important. Are you coming to Earth because of your duty to your people, or is there another reason?" Talia's antennae quivered with emotion. Among her kind, such directness about feelings was rare, vulnerability invited attack. Yet Marcus had shown her a different path. "Both," she answered honestly. "My people need this alliance. But I..." Her skin flushed with deep violet patterns of intimate truth. "I need to understand what has grown between us. On Vespera, relationships are practical, for protection, reproduction, survival. What I feel for you serves no evolutionary purpose, yet it feels more essential than breathing." Marcus reached out, gently tracing the luminescent patterns on her forearm. "On Earth, we call it love. It often defies practical explanation." "Love," Talia repeated, the human word strange on her tongue. "Is it always this frightening?" "Always," he smiled. "But unlike the dangers of your world, this is a fear worth embracing." Under the ancient light of stars that had witnessed the birth of both their worlds, Talia leaned forward. Their physiologies were different, her exoskeleton against his soft skin, her 4 eyes meeting his 2, yet when their lips met, the universe seemed to realign around this impossible connection. I will need a guide on Earth, she whispered against his mouth. Someone to teach me how not to be prey in a world I don't understand. And I'll need someone to remind me to see the wonder in my own world, Marcus replied, his hands gently cradling her face. We'll navigate it together. As the 3 moons of Vespera cast their light upon the unlikely pair, Talia realized that perhaps the greatest strength wasn't in fleeing or fighting, but in finding someone worth staying for. Earth's gravity felt strange against Talia's exoskeleton, slightly heavier than Vespera's pull, making her movements more deliberate. The research facility in New Zealand had been modified to accommodate Vesperan physiology, with higher humidity levels and specialized lighting that mimicked her homeworld spectrum. Still, after 3 months on this blue planet, everything remained wonderfully, terrifyingly alien. Your adaptation is progressing remarkably, Dr. Patel noted as she reviewed Talia's latest medical scans. Your respiratory system is adjusting to our atmosphere better than projected. Vesperans evolved to survive, Talia replied, flexing her wings experimentally. The Earth's denser atmosphere made flight more challenging, but not impossible. Adaptation is our speciality. After her examination, Talia found Marcus waiting in the corridor, leaning against the wall with 2 cups of the sweet herbal tea she'd grown fond of. His smile still triggered an involuntary shimmer across her skin, a response she'd stopped trying to hide. The ambassador from the European Union arrives tomorrow, he said, falling into step beside her. Are you ready? As ready as I'll ever be, she sighed, her antennae twitching with nervous energy. Though I still don't understand why humans need so many different governing bodies. The Highland hives function with just one council. We're complicated creatures, Marcus laughed, his hand finding hers as they walked. The casual intimacy still thrilled her. On Vespera, such vulnerability would be unthinkable outside the safety of one's private dwelling. They reached the observation deck that had become Talia's favorite retreat. Through its massive windows, the Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly before them, its vastness still incomprehensible to someone from a predominantly land-bound world. I spoke with the Highland matriarch this morning, Talia said, her voice quieter. The first human delegation has arrived safely. They're establishing the scientific exchange program we proposed. That's wonderful news, Marcus replied, but his expression remained attentive, sensing there was more. She also asked when I planned to return. Talia turned to face him fully, her 4 eyes meeting his 2. The exchange agreement was for 6 months. I have only 3 remaining. The unspoken question hung between them. Their relationship had deepened since arriving on Earth, growing into something neither had experienced before. Their physiological differences presented challenges, but they had discovered beautiful ways to bridge them, his fingers tracing the sensitive edges of her wings, her antennae gently exploring the contours of his face in moments of intimacy that transcended their biological distinctions. What do you want, Talia? Marcus asked, the directness she'd come to love about him shining through. I want to build something that hasn't existed before, she answered. Not just between us, but between our worlds. The matriarch has offered me a permanent position as liaison to Earth. I could split my time between worlds. Marcus's expression brightened. And I've been offered a teaching position at the new Xenobiology Institute they're establishing on Vespera. We could make both worlds our home. Talia's skin rippled with patterns of joy, bright blues and purples that Marcus had learned to read as clearly as any human expression. There will be challenges, she cautioned, ever practical. Neither of our species has navigated this territory before. That's what pioneers do, Marcus smiled, drawing her closer. We map the unknown for those who follow. Later that evening, they hosted a small gathering in their quarters, Elena and Jamal from the original expedition team, along with Kivara and Ithran, the other Vesperan ambassadors. Human and alien foods shared the same table, conversations flowed across cultural divides, and laughter, a concept Talia had only recently begun to understand, filled the room. As she watched Marcus demonstrating a traditional Earth dance to an intrigued Ethron, Talia felt a profound sense of rightness. On Vespera, she had survived by understanding her place in the natural order, as prey, always alert, always ready to flee. On Earth, she was learning a different way of existing, not defined by what might hunt her, but by what she might build. "You seem contemplative," Elena noted, joining her by the window. "I was thinking about evolution," Talia replied. "Not the biological kind, but the personal one. How meeting a single being from another world can change everything you believed about yourself." Outside, Earth's single moon cast its pale light across the ocean. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, diplomatic meetings, cultural misunderstandings to navigate, biology to contend with. But for the first time in her life, Talia wasn't scanning for escape routes or dangers. Instead, she was looking forward, toward possibilities that stretched as vast as the stars that connected her two homes. In the reflection of the window, she could see Marcus watching her from across the room, his expression one of quiet wonder. Not the look of a predator or even a protector, but of an equal, traveling a path neither of their ancestors could have imagined possible. The prey had not become a predator. She had become something entirely new, a pioneer.